Let's go ahead and practice finding the equations of some parallel and perpendicular lines together. This is the diagram that we're given over here to the right, so let's see what we can find out from that information as well as what they're telling us in the problem. So first of all, they do tell us that lines K and N intersect on the y-axis. So this point right over here is on the y-axis, and notice that's going to be the y-intercept for both of those lines. So if we go ahead and write the equation for line N later and we write it in that y equals mx plus b, then this b value is going to be right over here. And the same thing for line K, when you go ahead and write the equation for that one in slope-intercept form, if we're going to use that form of y equals mx plus b, they're going to share the same b value. That's what that means. Okay. What other information do we know? As for line N and line M, they don't tell us that they are parallel, but they do tell us other information that they want us to use to figure out that they're parallel. So notice that we have this transversal of K running through it, and it creates these two consecutive interior angles, and they are supplementary. So since they add up to 180 degrees, we can actually go ahead and say that this line N and M are going to be parallel. So since that 71 degrees plus 109 degrees adds up to 180, we know that lines N and line M are going to be parallel or have the same slope. Then if you notice this perpendicular symbol over here, we know that line J and line K are going to be perpendicular to each other, so that they are going to have slopes that are opposite reciprocals of each other. Now it's a little bit overwhelming to know where to start for this particular problem, but just see which line has the most amount of information that we can start with. In that case, I'm going to go ahead and start with line M here. It looks like we actually have 2 points. We have this 5, 2. We also have this -3, -1. So I think that's the only line we can really start with where we can find the slope first. All right, so let's go ahead and start with line M and see if we can go ahead and find the slope of it. Okay, so starting with line M, this is our equation for slope. So if we're going to call this our y2 and y1 and our x2 and x1, we can go ahead and substitute these in and say this is going to be 2 minus this -1, which is going to be 2 plus 1. And that's going to be over this 5 minus -3 or 5 plus 3. All right. So simplifying this a bit, we're going to have a slope of 3/8. And this is going to be the slope for line M. So we know the slope for line M is 3/8. And since line N and M are parallel, when we look at line N, the slope is also going to be 3/8. Now, what else do we know about line N? Well, for line N, we also know that we have a point of 4, 5. And so writing that down, we have a point and a slope for line N. Let's go ahead and see if we can find the equation for line N. So using point slope form, where M is 3/8, this is going to be our x1 and y1. Let's go ahead and substitute each of these values in. So plugging these in, we're going to have y minus this 5 is going to be equal to 3/8 multiplied by x minus 4. All right, so if we were just looking for the equation for N, we could stop here, but I think what we need to do is figure out the b value or the y-intercept for line N, which is this dot right here, because this dot is shared with line K, and that's going to help us figure out stuff for line K and J, right? All right, so while this is an equation for line N, let's actually go and see if we can turn this into slope-intercept form. But why do we want to do that? Well, right now we don't know the y-intercept for N, which is this dot right over here. If we can turn this into y equals mx plus b, or slope-intercept form, then we find out this y value, or the b value rather, if you want to call it that y-intercept. And that dot's important because that dot is also on line K, which is what we're trying to get to, right? So let's go ahead and distribute this slope to each of these terms on the inside, and let's turn this into slope-intercept form so we can find out that b value. So the left side is going to stay the same as y minus 5. The right side we're going to have is 3/8 x minus, and then you can multiply this 3/8 times -4, but the 4 and 8 will cross cancel, and that's going to be -3/2. Feel free to write that out if you need to. And then what we're going to do next is let's go ahead and add 5 to both sides here. So if we go ahead and add 5, on the left side we're just going to be left with y, and it's going to be equal to 3/8 x. And then on the right side, let's just go ahead. We have this -3/2, right? So it's -3/2. We're adding 5. Now 5 is the same thing as 10/2. So -3/2 plus 10/2, that's going to be 7/2. Okay, that's also 3.5 if you want to write, but I'm just going to keep it as an improper fraction and write 7/2. So this is the equation for line n, and so if we can use this information, we can go ahead and see if we can also find out something about k now, right? So I'm going to go ahead and plot this dot right over here, right? This dot, this y-intercept. Now, what is the value of this point? Well, we know that this 7/2 is the b value, or the y-intercept, so we can go ahead and just say that this point here is going to be 0, 7/2, right? That's the y-intercept for line n, but it's also going to be the y-intercept for this line k that we have right over here. So here's line k, and we also know its b value now, and its b value is going to be the 0, 7/2. What else do we know for line k? Well, we technically know this point over here is also on line k, and so we can use that information to help us. All right, so moving on to line k now, what we can do with these 2 points, we have a point here and a point here. You could do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 to find the slope, but I don't think we actually need to do that. I think we can go ahead and use a little bit of a shortcut and go straight into y equals mx plus b, or slope-intercept form, just because we already have a b value here. All right, so let's see, what is that slope-intercept form? That's right, it's this y is equal to mx plus b, and we know b is equal to this 7/2. So I'm going to go ahead and write b is equal to 7/2, or 7/2. And we have a point that is on line k, which is this -2, 6. So for a point on this line, we can say that's going to be -2, 6. Right? That's going to be our x and y. So I think we can go ahead and use this instead, and then find the slope here. So our b value is going to be right here. This is going to be our x value, that's -2, and then our y value is 6. So substituting this in, we're going to get 6 is equal to m. Again, this is just another way to find slope, but it's going to be hopefully helpful so that we can avoid using the fractions, which you can totally do if you want to, and then plus 7/2. All right, so let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit. We're going to have 6 on the left side is equal to m times -2. That's -2m plus 7/2. Now, if we go ahead and take away 7/2 on both sides, on the left side, we're going to have 6 minus 7/2. Now, 6 is the same thing as 12/2 minus 7/2. That's 7/2. We're going to get that 12 minus 7 is going to be 5/2. All right, so we're going to have 5/2, or 2.5, whatever you want to call it. That's equal to -2 times m. All right, now if we go ahead and divide both sides by -2, then we can find out what m is going to be. Now, if you go ahead and divide that, that's going to be 5/2 divided by -2, which is the same thing as multiplying by -1/2 if you multiply by the reciprocal. And I think this is going to be -5/4. I think that's what the slope's going to be here. So we can say the slope for line k is going to be -5/4. So now we have the slope for line k, and we know the y-intercept for line k because it's the same y-intercept as line n over there. So we can write our final equation in slope-intercept form of y is equal to -5/4 x plus 7/2. This would be the equation for line k. All right, so let's go ahead and just plop that down on our solution. And so that's the equation for line k. Now let's go ahead and look at line j together. So what do we know about line j? Well, line j is going to be perpendicular to this line k. Notice this right angle symbol here. So if we know the slope for line k, let's go ahead and just take the opposite reciprocal of this slope here and use that for this final line. Not only are we going to take the opposite reciprocal of this slope here, but we're also going to use this point of -2, 6, because that point is on line k and on line j, so we're going to use that point that we used earlier, but this time we're going to use it for line j with a different slope. So let's go ahead and do our final line of line j. For the slope here, let's go ahead and see what was our slope for line k. Well, line k had a slope of -5/4, so the opposite reciprocal would be +4/5, right? So let's go ahead and write that down as our slope for line j. That's going to be +4/5. As for a point, we knew it was going to share that point with line k. So if we go ahead and look at the picture again here, for line j here, that's this one here. We know that we have this -2, +6. So let's go ahead and write that down as well. Let's go ahead and write this -2, +6. And so we have a point and a slope again, so let's go ahead and use point slope form. Just going to go ahead and take our point slope form from earlier and paste that here, and then substituting in, we're going to get y minus 6 is equal to m, which is 4/5, multiplied by x minus -2 or x plus 2. All right, so you can go ahead and leave your equation like this in point slope form if you would like to, but I'm just going to go ahead and practice going into slope-intercept form one last time, just because. But if you're allowed to leave it in this form, just go ahead and do that. This is going to be y minus 6 is equal to 4/5 x, and then it's going to be plus 8 over 5. All right, and then one last time, if we go ahead and turn this into y equals mx plus b, we can go ahead and add 6 to both sides. And if we do that, we're going to get y is equal to, on the left, and on the right side, we're going to have this 4/5 x, and then adding these two together, we're going to have this 8/5. We're adding on 6. Now 6 is the same thing as 30 over 5, all right? And then so you can add these now, it's going to be 38 over 5. All right, so that's going to be the y-intercept for this equation for line J. Alrighty, so there you have the equation for line J written in slope-intercept form. Going all the way back to the top now, let's go ahead and just write that in. Here are the two equations that we were asked to find. We have line K, which has a slope of -5/4, and then we have line J, which is perpendicular to line K, so notice it has an opposite reciprocal slope to it. Alright, so that just about wraps up this video on these practice problems dealing with parallel and perpendicular lines. If you found the video helpful, please consider giving it a thumbs up and sharing with a classmate or friend who might also find it helpful. And as always, keep up the great work that you're already doing, and I'll see you in the next one.